He's the man who could oversee the highest profile investigation in the country, not to mention the Justice Department itself for years to come. And going before a Senate panel for the first of 2 days of confirmation hearings today, William Barr addressed many of the most controversial questions about his nomination head on, particularly about the Russia investigation.
I believe it is vitally important that the special counsel be allowed to complete his investigation. I also believe it is very important that the public and Congress be informed of the results of the special counsel's work. I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
And as for concerns that the president might have too much influence over Barr's actions,
I feel I'm in a position in life where I can do the right thing and not really care about the consequences, in the sense that I can truly be independent. I am not going to do anything that I think is wrong, and I will not be bullied into doing anything I think is wrong by anybody, whether it be editorial boards or Congress or the president. I'm going to do what I think is right.
Sounds largely like what many of the Democrats would want to hear. And for a guy who was confirmed unanimously as George H.W. Bush's Attorney General back in '91, you might think it'd be fairly smooth sailing for him from there. But when the senators later circled back around to that question of whether the Mueller report might be made public, suddenly came what appeared to be a different answer. Responding to Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, Barr said, quote, "As the rules stand now, the rules, I think, say the special counsel will prepare a summary report on any prosecutive or declination decisions, and that shall be confidential and be treated as any other declination or prosecutive material within the department." So retreat or just legal mumbo-jumbo? Joining me to discuss this and more, Martha Coakley, former state attorney general, now partner at Foley Hoag. Martha, it's good to see you.
Jim.
Renee Landers, Suffolk professor and constitutional law expert. Hello, Renee.
Hello, Jim.
And Dan Small, former assistant U.S. attorney who's worked with Mueller in the past and is now partner at Holland and Knight. Dan, it's good to see you, too. So can we start with that thing I said at the end here? The original statement he makes about releasing the report and transparency and the answer to Hirono, it almost sounded to me like it was two different people answering the same question. Am I wrong? Am I missing something?
Some of it's legal mumbo-jumbo, and some of it is he's thought, look, there are three options here, really, right? If I believe the DOJ memo that you can't indict a sitting president, you could have a Mueller memo that says, well, he should be indicted, but he's the president. If that were the case, he's saying, well, I might have to treat that as a declination, but we don't know.
Declination meaning declining to prosecute.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but only for that one fact, not that he shouldn't be, but only because he's the president.
So you agree that it's not in conflict? It sounded like it was in conflict to me.
I think he's trying to hedge his bets, but I think if you just think about the recommendation about whether to indict or not, as opposed to the body of the report, which lays out all the results of the investigation, if that's what he meant, then maybe that's okay.
How about you? You want to make it sort of unanimous or no?
No, I disagree. I think this is far too important to treat it like some standard, declination memo on a drug case.
So what does that mean?
That means it ought to be public. And for him to walk back that dramatically, I think, is disturbing.
So much is this concerning. As I said, in 1991, there was a voice vote, essentially unanimous. And while he would not be the Democrats' choice, as one Democrat said, Barack Obama, elections have consequences. Why should this guy not be 100 zip all over again, even if he's not the Democrats' cup of tea?
Oh, he will be. I mean,
100 to nothing, you think?
There'll be
Elizabeth Warren has already said she's voting no.
Yeah, exactly. But there'll be a couple of no's. But there's no question the man is qualified. He's got a great reputation. And he is saying a lot of the right things today. This is not a good day for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump thought he was buying loyalty, he's got a nominee who says Bob Mueller is a great guy and a good friend. The FBI is great, and the Department of Justice is great.
Anybody would take issue with the first half of that? Anybody here think that this guy does not deserve overwhelming confirmation, even if he is not ideologically what the Democrats would like to see?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the best they are going to do under President Trump. No pun intended. The bar has not been very high, given the current acting and general sessions before him. He's smart. He's got integrity. His written statement, as we know, talked about voting rights and civil rights. And he is a grown-up. He is going to say, I think, that, as he said in the written statement, I am serving in this job. It's not about a particular attorney general. It's about the oath I take to the office and to the Constitution.
You know, one thing that heartened me, I have to say, is I think the conventional wisdom to which I subscribed is that when Brett Kavanaugh's head almost popped off during his confirmation hearing, people were saying he's really testifying for one person, not for the American people. He's testifying for the guy who nominated him. I didn't get that sense here today. Donald Trump would not be greatly comforted by what he heard from William Barr, would he?
No, I think that I agree with that. I also think that in some ways, the concern the Democrats had was that if you have the president, basically fires Jeff Sessions because he's insufficiently loyal to the president, especially on the Mueller investigation, by recusing himself, then the president should be concerned by what Barr said today, because it's clear that he has not, as Dan said, has not bought loyalty by making this nomination.
Let me bring a few other things up that, again, I don't know if I'm making too much out of this. According to the Washington Post, his prepared remarks differed from his spoken opening remarks in just one way. He changed Russian interference to Russian attempt to interfere. Is that much ado about not much? It seems to me, in light of the fact that's a central issue in this, or what the Russians did and didn't do vis-a-vis Donald Trump in the elections, that it's not nothing. Is it nothing, any of you?
I mean, he was pretty clear that there is Russian interference and it is an issue, and directly contradicted the president in several respects there. I don't see that as a big deal, and who knows whether that was intentional or just came out of his mouth.
So none of you seem to be terrible. Is there starting with you, Renee, is there anything today that did give you pause? Again, I know he probably wouldn't be any of the three of your first choice to be Attorney General, but he is the president's choice. Anything that really set off an alarm with you?
Well, I think that his treatment of the states, I think, was really kind of problematic.
How so?
Well, he seemed to indicate from his testimony that he expected the states to solve the gun control problem by, adopting tougher background check rules and things like that. And that seems to be, that's a very limited fix, and all the states are not going to do it. And more
of a fix than virtually any Republican in the Senate is willing to embrace.
This is true, but it still doesn't get you all the way there.
How about the Roe v. Wade thing? And Elizabeth Warren, in her remarks, I think it was a tweet today, William Barr has already expressed his bias against the Mueller investigation. That's the 27-page memo that he submitted quite a while ago. That alone should disqualify him from serving as Attorney General. He also, once he got the ACA, thinks Roe v. Wade should be overturned and has a troubling record on criminal justice. I'll vote no. And by the way, he was asked about Roe v. Wade today, and he said, I said that in 1991 during a confirmation hearing that it should be overturned. And he basically said, not in these words, that in 2019, it's settled law. Does his Roe v. Wade record concern you?
No, in the sense that it's always concerning, but the battle right now is with the courts, the federal courts, and when it's state versus, what's happening in the states. So he's not going to, I'd be more worried if you're going on the Supreme Court with that opinion than being an Attorney General, but he said what his priorities are going to be. And the ones that are encouraging are looking at civil rights, looking at integrity of voting, looking at violent crime, predatory crime. So I think he's a straight shooter. He's much more conservative, probably, than many of us would want.
Anything discourage you? You said those were encouraging. Anything troubling to you, or apparently not? No.
Well, he's Trump's choice, so it's
that is the way the Constitution works.
I get that. I understand
that.
But of the two we've had so far, and of the other possibilities, I have to say,
Sessions, Whitaker, and
yes, and anybody else he might have appointed. I think most of us see him as a professional.
How about you?
There are a couple things he did that are disturbing. One is he backed off making the Mueller report public, and the other is he backed off, this was bizarre to me, whether he would follow the advice of the ethics people at the Department of Justice.
He said he'd make his own decision.
He'd make his own decision. Well, that's
great. But he
did
go on to say that he thought that Sessions probably made the right decision to recuse himself.
He thought that Sessions made the right decision, but that if the ethics people of the Department of Justice recommended recusal, he would not necessarily follow it.
Should I be surprised that none of you mentioned the memo that so concerned Democrats to begin with, basically taking issue with the whole obstruction of justice portion of the investigation? What I would assume that some Democrats are thinking, I don't care what he says in the hearing today, the memo speaks for itself. He had great problems with part of an investigation that he is going to be overseeing. Does that trouble anybody, or that was then, this is now? His position is that's what we former DOJ people do, and he went on to say that even in the case of Menendez, a Democratic senator from New Jersey, I wrote a memo saying he shouldn't be prosecuted, so I'm an equal opportunity kind of thing. People think the memo was then as a freelancer, and we're okay with it now? Anybody?
Well, he's wearing a different hat now. Obviously, we look at people's writings before to see what they might do, but he's now the Attorney General, and often these things are fact-specific. There's more history. It's one thing to write an op-ed when you don't really...
Based on what you've read in the newspaper.
Yeah, you're not involved in the investigation. His job is very different now, and I'd like to think, and maybe I'm being hopeful, that he will take that job seriously.
By the way, if you wanted to be in the Senate, you both have... Would you all three vote for him if you were senators right now in Washington? Would you?
Probably not.
Probably not. Why? What's the primary reason?
On principle, that there are things around choice and other matters, but he will get confirmed.
Would you vote for him?
Probably not.
Would you?
For the same reasons.
Same reason, probably not. But it's a principled thing. It's not a practical. He's going to get confirmed.
Before we leave, just totally say, I know all of you, and I know all three of you care about racial justice issues. The Republicans did something they haven't done, is they actually took to task somebody who I think even a racist would know was a racist, Steve King from Iowa. Some people say, as John King from CNN did on a radio show today, amen, it was good he did that. But others are saying the only reason they did this is because they don't want to go against the guy who also has racism in his blood, the guy who calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, Donald Trump. Quickly, what's your take on the GOP taking on Steve King, Martha Coakley?
They know the public is getting increasingly impatient, angry about issues like this, and that's what they're responding to.
How about you?
King had a close call in his re-election fight, and now he's vulnerable, so it's very easy for them to do things to him.
And he's got a primary opponent, too.
That's right.
How about you?
It was disgraceful that the president did not come after King, and the Republicans stripped him of his committee, but they didn't censure him. So, I mean, the Republicans voted unanimously that the earth is round, and that's about all they did.
Dan, nice to see you.
Great to be here.
Renee, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jim.
Martha, great to see you.
Good to see you,
Thanks
Jim.
so much for your time. I appreciate it.